Warm greetings, Code Monkeys and fellow VEDSies, and welcome back to CodedLockFilms. Today we're going to be doing another commentary. We've got Disney Direct DVD 101 Dalmatians 2 here. I did erroneously at one point refer to this movie as 102 Dalmatians. That is, of course, not accurate. That's the title of the sequel to the live-action movies where Glenn Close plays Cruella. I haven't seen those. I have no idea of their quality. I have no idea what people think of them. But we're going to move on. So this video. Again, I'll start off by saying one other thing. At one point in this video, I say that this movie feels like an episode of a non-existent 101 Dalmatians TV show that's been stretched out into a feature-length film. And many people have pointed out that there was, in fact, a 101 Dalmatians cartoon. I did not know that when I first made this video. I know it now because people won't stop pointing it out. But I still stand by that statement because this movie feels like a non-existent episode of a TV show. Because from what I understand and from what little I have seen of it since looking for it a bit, when that excuse me, when that particular set of comments started arriving, I looked up a bit of the 101 Dalmatians cartoon, and it is basically nothing like this movie. So I stand by the whole notion that this is like a non-existent episode of a cartoon, because the hypothetical cartoon that this would have been stretched out from is in fact non-existent. So, yeah, suck it. That's probably unprofessional of me, isn't it? Yeah, so I had a number of people commenting saying that they always thought Cruella was really funny and never took her very seriously. I never got that. She really freaked me out. Yeah, I always felt that she was one of Disney's, I don't know about like better villains, but certainly one of their more memorable villains. She has a really unique character design to her. She kind of takes that whole bad guys are pointy thing to a very, very extreme length, and I don't know, I always found her to be really striking and really, really damn intimidating. But yeah, so I guess I'll go straight into talking about how I would do this if I were given the opportunity to do so. How I would go about making sequel material to 101 Dalmatians, and tell you the truth, I would not make a movie. I would make a TV series because I think there is definite mileage in the 101 Dalmatians brand as far as TV series go. I mean, God knows, like, Paw Patrol is a huge thing right now. Kids love cartoon series that star animals in some fashion or another. So I thought that it would be really, really good for a serialized television format, but it took me a while to kind of puzzle out exactly what form I would have that TV show take. And I actually sort of stumbled across the idea when I was watching Lilo and Stitch, and then I remembered the Lilo and Stitch cartoon, which actually was not too bad. I didn't see a lot of it. I saw maybe like 10, 12 episodes of it, but I did enjoy it. And I feel like there's potential in that sort of model if you apply it to 101 Dalmatians. So basically, the way I would go about doing it is each episode would kind of focus on a different puppy, right? What you would do is you would have the core group of 15 puppies who were actually Pongo and Purdy's birth puppies. You would have them kind of be the main cast of characters, right? And, you know, each of them would have, you know, their different personalities. You don't have to make them terribly deep, you know. Some of them, you know, they can be fairly archetypal, you know, because that sort of thing works for, you know, kids' cartoons. And basically you would focus on, you would have like maybe 2 or 3 of the main 15 feature in every episode, but then the main character of each individual episode would just be a different one of the other however many Dalmatians. 101 minus 17 is 16, 84. So yeah, you have mileage for 84 episodes there. And you would basically just have each one of the puppies be going through like a problem that is in some way relevant to the experience of being a little kid. I can't think of anything terribly specific in that regard, but basically you have you take a puppy every episode and you give them a problem, like, you know, some, you know, relating to self-confidence or, you know, place in the world, or, you know, trying to figure out exactly, you know, what they want to do. And then from that point on, you would basically have the show be about all of these different puppies getting adopted. You can have, you know, Roger and Purdy basically wanting to, you know, the plantation idea is nice, but, you know, there's practicality issues involved in that, and you can't give that many dogs a good home. So yeah, I would have it be about, like, they're trying to get all of these dogs adopted, and basically 2 or 3 of the core 15 puppies every episode would go on to help each of these different puppies that an individual episode would focus on, you know, help them find a place for them. Like, you know, maybe this one has, you know, has an unusually strong nose, and, like, you know, become, you know, is like really good for hunting. You know, like you have one like that, you know, has a really, really demure and even temperament, and that makes he or she really, really skilled as a therapy dog. You know, that sort of thing. And basically, you know, you basically do Lilo and Stitch, the series, but, you know, about 101 Dalmatians. I think that could work. You know, I think that there's mileage in that idea. And another thing that I think is very, very important is that you don't use Cruella de Vil, because her story as a villain is over at the end of 101 Dalmatians, and you're only going to get diminishing returns with a villain like Cruella, because the problem with having a consistent villain throughout an entire series, particularly the type of children's series that's based around kind of returning to a baseline status quo at the end of every episode, is that if you use a constant villain in those episodes, it ends up being that villain ends up being really ineffectual and comical in certain ways, which is why, for the most part, Rugrats did not have a consistent villain. I mean, the most consistent villain on that show was Angelica, but, you know, like, you were more able to buy that she was a legitimate threat because it was just the world seen through the eyes of, you know, babies and toddlers, right? When you have the world of adults involved, that kind of villain sort of falls apart. Hey, speaking of falling apart, but yeah, I really think you don't want to use Cruella de Vil. Again, in the Rugrats, you know, the villain would be, you know, if there was a villain who was a person, it was appropriate to the situation, or sometimes it was just the situation itself. Like, you know, like there was the, like, I can't remember the name of the episode, but there was the one that like that focuses on like the Rugrats in like an Old West style town, and there's this bully called the Junk Food Kid. That was an episodic villain, right? And just stuff like that. I think that general approach could work for 101 Dalmatians. It would definitely be aimed at a very, very young demographic. I would say kids maybe like 3 to 6 years of age. But I think it could work, and that's basically what I'd do with the property if I were, given the creative control and told, okay, you have to put this thing together, so you got to come up with something. Yeah, that's about the best I could come up with. But like I said, I think it will work. It would be designed sort of built from the ground up to be a very low stakes kind of thing. But I think that could work. Which again, the fact that it's meant to be sort of low stakes is why you don't want to have a villain like Cruella in it. So speaking of Cruella here, if there's one thing that I would have liked to have included more of in this review, it's this guy in the background here, this artist, because he honestly is a riot. He's really genuinely funny. I think I only had the one really great line from him, which was the, I may be eccentric, but I am not a sicko. He's really entertaining in his own way. It's like, the best way I can think of to describe him is to say that he sort of splits the difference between Edna Mode and Judy Funny from the show Doug. He's very much got that that joke there, that Anastasia joke. That was pretty much just for one person. She knows who she is. But yeah, he really is very entertaining. The issue is that I did try to come up with ways to put more of him in the review, but it just didn't flow very well. I think that in the beginning, like when I was first sort of drafting this script, he did feature a lot more, but that script ended up being really long, and it would have made the video like in excess of 40-45 minutes. And so I pared that script down a lot, and one of the things that got lost in that process was seeing more of that guy. He really is very entertaining, and he's probably the most watchable thing about this movie. And I wish I could have shown you guys a little bit more of him, but he is entertaining. Not so entertaining that I can remember his name. I think they say his name like once in the entire movie, and then they never mention it again. In fact, I don't even know if they do say his name once. I don't know if they give him a name, because I can't recall a moment where he gets one. They probably do, and I'm just not remembering it. And this guy right here, the Jason Alexander dog, he's a pretty good example of how you should go about doing an episodic villain, right? This guy would work in an episode of a TV show, right? He just doesn't work in a movie, right? Because when you're telling one story over the course of 80 plus minutes, you need there to be more to it than the type of story you would be telling in an episode of a TV show. I have to thank Maddie for helping me out with these Seinfeld jokes here, because I was never a big watcher of Seinfeld. It just wasn't for me. I acknowledged that the show was very good. I just never really got into it. It wasn't the type of show that I was interested in. It's probably one of my biggest pop cultural blind spots. Seinfeld is a huge pop culture touchstone, and I know just so little about it. But I knew about the character of George Costanza, and I knew that he would be a good way to illustrate why it's hard to take the George Costanza dog seriously. I say the Jason Alexander dog. Lightning, that's it. Lightning is his name. Why it's hard to take Lightning seriously. And so I basically told her about the, like I gave her the sort of lead-in line there of like little moments of, okay, so I believe that is a Ford Anglia, by the way. Yeah. It was later renovated by the Weasleys. But so Maddie ended up providing me with pretty much all of the George Costanza lines. She basically gave me a grab bag of about 8 different lines, and I cherry-picked the ones that would work best in the given scenes. This scene I just don't get at all. Like, I don't get how, like, I don't need to go into it. I explained it in the review, just how, like, this is not how the criminal justice system works. Or at least I presume it was not. I was not alive in England at the time when this movie takes place. Maybe it did work like that, and I'm just a big idiot. But anyhow. What else do I have to say about this? Yeah, Horace and Jasper, again, I really do think they're 2 of Disney's best henchmen. You take them so seriously when you're watching 101 Dalmatians, and I was really surprised by just how good 101 Dalmatians was upon rewatching. Again, it was one of those movies I liked as a kid, but I didn't remember a whole lot about it, until I rewatched it again for prep for this review, and it's so good. It's really tight, well put together. The animation is really, really striking. Like the movie looks great. Even with as old as it is, if the animation does look old fashioned, it still looks great. And, the villains are really well conceived. The story's really well put together. The pacing is just spot on. And yeah, it's a really, really good movie. It's probably one of the, it may be the Disney film that I have watched as an adult for whose esteem I have had the most increase. I don't know if that sentence was grammatically correct at all. It probably wasn't. When I watch Disney movies again as an adult that I haven't seen for a while as a kid, sometimes they don't hold up terribly well. Sometimes they hold up pretty well. And sometimes I really, really love it. And this was one of those instances. And a big part of that is Horace, Jasper, and Cruella. Jasper, he really makes an impression, even when there's like slapstick stuff going on. You never stop taking him seriously, and that's a really, really hard thing to do, and 101 Dalmatians just nails it. And it's one of the things that I find so egregious about this movie is just how it just completely kneecaps its villains and just turns them into such goofy, cartoony jokes, right? And, again, I realize that the people who made these movies, specialized in making cartoons. They made animated series. But the tone of this the tone of this movie just doesn't fit the world of 101 Dalmatians at all. It does not feel even a little bit like the original movie. It's so different in terms of the kind of stuff that happens, the stakes, the tone, the look, and the music, obviously. I will say that the animation here is good. This is a well-animated little movie. Like, there's no animation errors. Like, it doesn't look, horribly cheap or, poorly done. It just doesn't have the same look of the original movie. And again, a lot of that is dependent upon budget. But it it stylistically does not resemble the original movie, really at all. The line work is very different, and the movement of everything is very different. Like the 101 Dalmatians, in a lot of regards, kind of looks like a moving painting, like something that you would see in like in an art gallery, right? And this movie, again, it doesn't look bad, but there's just there's nothing special about the animation. I try not to harp on that kind of thing because I've studied animation. I know what it's like to be an animator, and you are so limited by the amount of time you're given and the amount of money that you're given, and I know that like it's nobody's fault except the people who decide how much money and time to give the animators. Those are the people who are responsible for the way any of these direct-to-video sequels look. But I try not to harp on the animation too much if I don't have to, unless there's something particularly noteworthy about it. Like, I think the one time I mentioned the look of everything in the actual review is when I was talking about how drawing Cruella with these, softer, less harsh lines really is one of the things that diminishes her menace. Like, you can see there, like, her cheeks are so much rounder, and like her head is rounder, like there's just rounder shapes everywhere. And I make the joke, I've made the joke a couple of times that Disney villains are all pointy, but there's a reason that Disney villains are all pointy, because it works. Oh my god. I will say this, like, there are a couple of these little moments here where the 2D, like, there is a blend of 2D and 3D animation in this movie, and 2D and 3D are not terribly easy to blend and have it look not like crap. And on the occasions where it is blending 2D and 3D, it's actually pretty seamless. I think, like, the only reason that I really notice it is because I'm trained as an animator, and I have the eye for it. Like, my eye is trained to notice stuff like that, but I don't think the average person would really catch it unless they were specifically told to look for it. So I do appreciate that. I think that the animation in this movie is probably the best I've seen in a direct-to-video Disney sequel thus far, or at least the ones that I've reviewed. Mulan was about as good most of the time, but it had those few moments where the faces just went completely off the rails. But yeah, this is a good-looking movie, and again, it's not the worst direct-to-video Disney sequel by a long shot. But it just, again, the lack of stakes is very palpable in this movie. We're coming up on the end here. What else do I have to say? Somebody pointed out, and I don't know if this is accurate because I didn't look it up. I probably should have looked it up before starting this commentary. But apparently, Patch has 2 black ears in 101 Dalmatians, and he only has 1 black ear in this. I don't know if that is accurate, but it would not surprise me. I think they may have just been trying to balance out his character design a little bit by, having the 1 black ear opposite the big black eye. Or maybe it was just them not paying attention. Who knows, right? But yeah, I think that this review went pretty well. I got a chance in it to explain a couple of the things that I may not have gotten a chance to explain otherwise. I think it flows fairly well. It was challenging to write, like I said, because, this movie is really, really insubstantial in a lot of ways. And I try to have a certain elegance to my reviews in how it flows from one moment to the next, which is why Like you can see in my earlier reviews, they're definitely a lot. They feel a lot choppier because it's like, move to this moment, make a joke, move to this moment, make a joke, move to this moment, make a joke. I try to have I try to have a certain rising and falling action to the criticism in my reviews. Like, I think I did that best in Mulan 2, where I got, progressively angrier and angrier until we got to the most rage-inducing part of the movie, where I, went on that full, huge rant about how Mulan was such a deplorable character in that movie, and then it sort of calms down from there and reaches a calmer and more level-headed conclusion. And I think I've gotten pretty good at giving my reviews that sense of flow as time goes on. And this review probably went through a lot of rewrites. Like I said, the main thing that I ended up doing was I ended up cutting a lot of stuff out of the middle of this review, where I was, where it was more like, let me show you this thing and we'll make a funny joke about it. And that's entertaining in its own way, but I think that it ultimately leads up to a much less satisfying end product, which is why I prioritize, I try to prioritize criticism over humor in these videos at this point, just because I feel like it's more satisfying that way. Certainly it's more personally and creatively satisfying to me. Yeah, this is the episode of the Rugrats I was talking about, the junk food kid. Yeah, so I obviously have teased the Hunchback of Notre Dame 2 at the end of this video. I'm hoping to have that out by the end of VEDS. A lot of it just depends on how much time I get at the end of each day, which is, sort of nebulous. I will definitely have at least one, hopefully 2 Hunchback-related videos come out before I reach the end of VEDS, if not the actual Hunchback 2 review. In fact, in just a couple days, I'm hoping to have the first one of those out. But you'll see that when it happens. Oh right, there's a storyline scene at the end of this video. I forgot about that. Do I have anything to say? This little hologram thing is a stock asset that I bought from I bought. What I should say is that, like, I pay a little fee to be a member of this website called Footage Crate. It's a very, very small fee, and I have paid this fee to get some access to some of the premium assets, of which this is one. I just think it's a really cool asset. There was a lot of color correction involved in this particular video. That hologram, I basically set up like a little flashlight underneath the underneath the frame to make the light look like it was coming a little bit from that, and then I color corrected a lot of footage to have more of a green tone to it, just to make it feel like it sort of belonged in the same world of this scene. If there's one thing I really regret, is that I would have really liked it if, in that moment when I'm talking to myself, when I am talking to Creeper, I really would have liked it if Creeper had been facing the other direction. That would have just been more pleasing from a cinematography standpoint. Entropy is going to be opening that box up soon, the one that is concerned in this particular video. But that is actually a somewhat complex scene, so we will be. That's another thing that I'm hoping to have out by the end of VEDS. That might end up being the last video of VEDS. It just kind of depends on how my month goes. It's all very nebulous, VEDS, just because I never get as much prep work done as I would like to. But I'm hoping to have the video where Entropy opens that box and looks what's inside, or rather, he knows what's inside the box. It's a USB drive, but where he plugs in the USB drive to see what's on it. I'm hoping that'll be up by the end of VEDS as well. But we will see what happens, and I'm a little over time here, but, you know, that happens. So, I hope you've enjoyed this commentary, and until next time, Code Monkeys and fellow VEDSies, I will see you tomorrow.